Hey, it's Steve Jolly with the Home Buying Skills Channel, and on today's show, we're going to talk about should you buy a home or rent in 2022 and the secrets to wealth creation. Are you ready to get started? Let's get to business. I want to start out today's show talking about the pros and cons of renting versus buying, and then some other insights so you can make the decision that's best for yourself. So let's start talking about renting pros. Now, one of the best things about renting is you know your exact costs every month. There are no home repair costs. You don't have to pay for a leaky faucet or a toilet that doesn't drain or HVAC system that doesn't work. You know your costs on the front end, and if anything breaks in the home, you're able to call the seller and have them fix it or repair it at their cost, not yours. So that's one of the biggest pros to renting a home is you know your exact cost every month while you have that home leased. And as I said a minute ago, the seller is responsible for all repairs and all maintenance and the cost of those repairs and maintenance. So not only are they responsible for calling up and finding the vendors to do the work and making sure the work's done right, but they're also responsible for paying for that. So that takes a huge burden off of renters that they don't have to come out of pocket this month or next month for repairs that they did not expect on the home. They also didn't have to plan and spend the time to make sure that those repairs were done right by a professional because the landlord took care of all that for them. Probably the last pro about renting is it helps you plan your moves better because you know based on your end date of your lease when you have to move out, and you can easily move to another place based on that time. If you're selling a home, you don't always have that level of comfort. You don't always know that exact date that you have to leave until you get your home under contract, until they go through all those contingencies. So that's one of the pros about renting is you know exactly when you have to leave. That way you can plan your move to your next place much easier. Now let's talk about some of the cons of renting a home. And the first one people are going to talk about, they will tell you that renting is like throwing money away. Well, it is and it isn't, but the truth of the matter is that you're not building any equity. So all the money that you spend doesn't build your equity, but it builds equity for your landlord. So all the money you spend is paying for his mortgage payment and his interest, and all the appreciation is going to your landlord. That's a big con. That's the number one con of renting a home. Now, another con of renting a home is that you don't have control over the lease, and there are certain things, depending on the state you live in and the circumstances you're in, there are certain situations where you could lose your lease and have to move unexpectedly, and that is a huge con about renting. Normally you think all those things are taken care of, but there are certain situations that your lease can be canceled, and if that happens, you may have to move right away. You don't want that to happen. Another con about renting is that your rent can increase every time your lease renews. And so if you're on a month to month, they could technically increase your rent every month that you continue to stay there. And especially in a market where home prices are appreciating, rent is going up too, and rent has gone up significantly in the last year or two. So if you don't want to keep paying more and more every year, then you don't want to rent. That's a huge con of renting. And because you don't know what your payment is going to be next year, because you don't even know if you can live in this place next year, there is less security with renting than there is with buying your own home. So if security is important to you, that's going to be a problem for you as you're renting a home. Another con to renting is there's just simply less pride and less prestige in renting a home versus owning a home. That's just the facts. That's just the way our society looks at. And we can't really change that. But just know there's less pride and less prestige in renting than buying. It's not a huge factor, but it's something you want to consider. Another con to renting is you can't update or upgrade your home if you wanted to. Let's say you wanted different color walls or you wanted some different fixture in the bathroom. All those things you can't do if you're renting a place, but you could do if you own the home. So when you own the home, you can customize it to the way that you want it to look, the way that you want to live. You can't always do that with renting. And the last con to renting is pets. They control what kind of pets you have, how many you can have, and how big they can be, and what breeds they might be. The management of the place that you're renting or the landlord can control all of that. They can change that at any time, and you have nothing that you can do to prevent that. So if you have pets and that's important to you, then you might want to consider something other than renting, especially if you have large dogs or large numbers of animals. So let's talk about the pros of home ownership. And one of the biggest pros is that you build equity with every mortgage payment. Part of every mortgage payment that you make goes to pay down the principal, the amount that you owe on the home, so that as you pay those down, every month you owe more and more of the home until you get to your 15-year or 30-year mark, whichever loan you chose, and your home is completely paid off. And that is the number one way in America to generate wealth. And 70% of people's wealth is tied directly to their home for the average American. It's huge. It's really important, especially if you want to leave something to your family down the line. Generational wealth. That's the number one reason to buy a home. The second pro of buying a home is because you can design it how you want it to look. You can design the interior how you want it to look. Most cases, you can design the exterior to want it to look. You don't have to ask permission from anybody except maybe codes, but you can design it the way you want to look, and the way that it works for you. And you can design it how you want it to be, and it totally customized for you. You cannot do that when you're renting a home. Second most important reason why people buy home is there's a lot of safety, there's a lot of security in home ownership. I don't know about you, but I sleep better knowing that the roof over my head, I own it, and that I'll own it outright someday, and that nobody can kick me out of it as long as I continue to make my payments. That gives me a lot of security. That makes me feel better and helps me sleep better every night. But there's other reasons, being that no one can tell me to leave next month. Nobody can raise my mortgage payment next month. Your mortgage payment, in most cases, is going to be very similar from the day that you started to the end of your loan period. The only thing that might change, it's not the principal and interest that changes, but it is your taxes and your insurance that might go up somewhat. But for the most part, the meat of your mortgage payment is going to stay the same throughout the life of your loan. So as you make more money year after year after year, that home payment becomes a little bit easier and easier to make. There's also a ton of pride in home ownership, and people take better care of their homes when they own them, and your neighbors will take better care of their homes when they own theirs. And that home ownership and people taking better care of their homes and renovating and keeping them up to date and keeping them maintained, that helps promote and keep the values in your area high. So that pride of ownership is a very important part of creating that wealth, creating that appreciation, and keeping your value of your home as high as possible. And then to me, the last pro of home ownership is it's part of the American dream. It's what most of us grow up dreaming about, is one day to be wealthy enough, to be secure enough, to be fortunate enough to own our own home so we can raise our family the best way that we can, and to own a home in a community where we feel welcomed and loved and appreciated and valued. That is so important. All of that adds to the security and the safety and the pros and just the enjoyment of living in your own home. Now let's talk about some of the cons of home ownership. And here's probably a big one, and it kind of goes along with those repairs and maintenance costs. But not every dollar that you spend towards fixing up and improving your home is going to really add to the bottom line. It's not always going to add to appreciation, because sometimes maintenance and repairs are what's expected. Nobody expects the home to come in to need paint, but yet you're going to have to paint it every 5 or 10 years to keep it looking fresh and keep it looking sharp and to keep it looking like a home that you want to live in. So although there's going to be costs, and a lot of those costs are going to go towards and help your home appreciate, not all of the expenses, not all the money you spend on your home is going to go towards that building equity. So that's one con of owning your own home. Second con of owning your own home is you can't always sell your home when you want to move, or you can't always sell at the price you need to when you want to move. And sometimes because that's based on market conditions and not a set contract like you would have with a rental. So you can't always sell your home immediately. It might take a little bit longer than you want to, especially if you want to get the price that you're looking for. Sometimes when you own a home, you have to be a little bit more flexible when it comes time to move and to move into that next home. Another big con of home ownership is property taxes. Now, renters think that they don't pay property taxes, but in reality, they're already built into your lease. They're already built into the monthly payment that you make every month. So sure, renters do pay property tax, but homeowners are directly responsible for it. That bill is tied to their name. So there is a little bit more responsibility in home ownership. And many times that property taxes, they're taking out of your payment. So it's not something, if you have a mortgage that includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, then your property taxes are going to be built into your payment and you're not going to have to make those. But not everybody's mortgage is set up that way. And if it's not, that's just an extra step that you have to do every year to make sure your property taxes are paid so that the city or the county doesn't foreclose on your home for late taxes. It's just another thing that you may have to do if it's not already built into your loan. But if it is built into your loan, one thing you want to do at least once a year is to make sure those property taxes are paid on schedule, on time, when the mortgage company told you they were going to make those payments. Now, the last con of home ownership is insurance. And homeowners insurance is more expensive than renters insurance, probably by a factor of at least 5 times. So there's more expense involved in purchasing homeowners insurance than there is in renters insurance, because in renters insurance, you're just insuring your personal property and not really the structure that you're renting. But when you own the home, you want to make sure that the structure that you have is insured. So if anything happens, if it catches fire and burns down, you can rebuild that property the next day. So homeowners insurance is an extra cost that goes along with owning a home, and it is a little bit more expensive. And I included that as the very last con. So one of the questions a lot of people are going to ask in order to decide whether they want to buy or sell is, what is cheaper? Is it cheaper to rent a home? Is it cheaper to buy a home? And that really depends on the market factors of where you want to buy or where you want to rent. Now, in many places like Nashville today, it is cheaper to buy a home in Nashville than it is to rent a home, because rental rates have increased significantly over the last couple of years. If you can find a home and buy it, you can save money over renting in addition to generating some wealth and appreciation. So that's one thing you want to consider in buying a home. Which is going to be cheaper, the rental or the purchase? Now, over the short term, because of closing costs and other factors, usually renting is cheaper than owning a home. So if it's 2 or 3 years or less, you may want to lean more towards renting a home. If it's 5 years or longer that you plan to stay, then definitely you would want to consider purchasing versus renting. Now, in most places, when you consider whether it's cheaper to rent or buy, you're looking at your monthly mortgage payment versus your monthly rent payment. And that's the only way you're making this analysis. But when you throw in appreciation and appreciation gained over time, that's when it really makes it a no-brainer. Over time, over the long run, 99% of the time, in most cases, it's going to be cheaper to own a home than it is going to be to rent a home. And it's also going to put more money in your pocket to own a home than it is to rent a home. And now that brings me to the secrets of wealth creation. And not a lot of people know about these, but it's really very simple, and here's how it works. So I'm going to give you some stats to begin with so you can really understand the power of it. Now, the average homeowner in the United States has 40 times more generational wealth. They have 40 times more money saved up in assets, in stocks, bonds, than the average renter. 40 more times. That is huge. And in terms of money, the average homeowner has $250,000 more net worth than the average renter. $250,000. That is a lot of money. And 70% of that wealth that the homeowner generated is tied directly to the property that they own. That is amazing. That's a fact that you have to keep in the back of your mind, especially when you're considering renting versus buying. Here's something else that you have to keep in mind. Not every property that's out there that's available to purchase is going to appreciate. And that's why you need a realtor by your side. You need somebody that understands the market that's going to tell you, yes, this is a good property to buy for appreciation, or no, we don't expect that property to appreciate because of these factors. You need to know that information before you buy a home, especially if you're looking at generating wealth with this asset of your home purchase. And that's why it's so important to connect with and work with an expert realtor who can walk you through this process and make sure you're buying the right home that fits all of your needs. So now that you've gained all this information, the next step you need to learn is, how do I decide? How do I decide whether I want to rent or whether I want to buy? And the first step is to look at your finances. What's going to make the most sense for you financially over the short term and over the long term? Is it going to make more sense for me financially to rent a home? Then that's what I'm going to do. If it's going to make better sense for me financially to buy a home, then that's probably what it's going to do. Everybody's going to have a different answer. There is no right answer for everyone. And you've got to look at all the facts and make the decision that's best for you and your family. But besides finances, we also have to consider lifestyle. Now, if you are traveling a lot for work, if you're traveling a lot because you just enjoy to go places, if you're not at your home a lot, well, then you may want to consider renting over buying, because if you don't have the time to maintain the home, to mow the lawn, to do all the things that need to be done on a weekly or monthly basis to keep your home value up, and you're not interested in hiring somebody to do that for you, then it's probably best that you continue to rent until your lifestyle changes. Lifestyle and finance are probably the two most important factors that you need to consider when you decide whether you're going to buy or rent a home. And then the last thing you want to think about is your own personal goals. How do you want to live your life? What goals have you set for yourself? And which of these avenues is going to better help you meet your goals? If renting a home is going to help you better meet your personal goals over the next couple of years, then I would suggest that you rent. If buying a home is going to help you do that, then I would suggest you buy. But what I said earlier is so true. There is no right answer for everyone. You've got to decide what's best for you and your family in this decision. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me or to any expert realtor. We'll be glad to help you. I hope you enjoyed today's video on home buying. If you liked the video, click the like button to let me know that you enjoyed it. If you have any specific questions, leave them in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss one of our videos. Take care.